welcome back to The Rise. And you are in for the biggest treat of the year because we are going to chat with someone today who is not only going to change your life, but probably someone you've been following and admiring for a really long time, as I have. We have the incredible, the brilliant, the beautiful Kate Northrup here. And we are going to be talking about money. We're going to be talking about doing less. We're going to be talking about maybe entrepreneurial marriages because we were getting into that a little bit before we started recording. But first, let me just tell you a few things about Kate so that we can welcome anyone who doesn't know Kate's work, which is probably not many of you. But Kate is an entrepreneur, a best-selling author, and a mother, and has built a multimedia digital platform called The Origin Company that reaches hundreds of thousands globally. And Kate, I love this about you, but we're going to get into it. Supporting ambitious women to light up the world without burning out. This is a really big deal because we've all been taught to hustle. You have a book, Do More. We're going to talk about, or do less, do more. That's a Freudian slip. We've been taught to do more, and Kate's helping us do less while still lighting up the world, right? The newer book, Money, a Love Story. You had a previous book on doing less, which we're going to get into. I mean, and just so you all know, Kate's created a planner. She's been featured on Oprah Daily, The Today Show, Yahoo Finance, Women's Health, Glamour, the New York Times, Harvard Business Review, so many more. And you've been living in Miami, but at the time of this recording, getting ready for a big move to
Yeah.
Nashville. So welcome to the show.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I'm so delighted. Our audience is so delighted to have you. We got introduced through a mutual friend and colleague, Kelly Roach, and then now get to have this experience together. And I'm so thrilled because, as I said, I've been a fan of your work for a long time, and it's the first time we've been able to meet a little bit, not in person yet, but through this conversation. So, Kate, I think before we get into all the brilliant work you're doing and your current program and coursework on money, when you think about your movement, helping women light up the world without burning out, could you tell us a little bit about where that came from and why that's your flag in the ground?
Yeah, it's so funny. I think that for so many of us, we are essentially like trying to either heal our parents or our childhood selves or both. So, 100% me. I was raised by two overachiever doctors, Ivy League
Mhm.
grads, go, 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 in New England, just hardcore, like academic success means everything. And my parents are amazing and so smart.
Mhm. Mhm.
And as a little girl, I just like wanted them to be around more, you know?
Yeah.
And so I made a decision early. Like I actually
Mhm.
started in the network marketing industry when I was in high school, selling vitamins for a direct sales company
Wow.
with a direct sales company. And I knew that early on, like I was like, I'm going to run my own business so I can make my own decisions around my time and be a really present mom and
Yeah.
and be able to be with my kids. And when I met my husband, who's also my business partner, he had that same desire, which is so cool. Like we were both in
Yes.
early stages, we were in our mid 20s,
Mhm.
but he also had gone into entrepreneurship so that he could be like have a family and really have a
Oh.
freedom-based lifestyle.
Mm.
And so ultimately, I'm so ambitious and I love ambitious women.
Mhm.
I think our light, our power is absolutely the most important resource to change the world.
Yes.
And the way we've been taught to use it and channel it is has been historically often really toxic. And I
Yes.
watched my mom, be in a career as she became a doctor in the 70s. And at that time, like you couldn't even get your own bank account as a woman. So, so
In
in
1974, I don't
1970,
know what
yeah.
your birth year is, but 74 was a little right before I came on the planet. Then you had to have someone co-sign to get a credit card.
A man,
A
specifically.
man, not
A man.
someone, a
My
man.
my granny became a widow at the age of 50, and she could not take out a loan in her own name for a business. She started a log cabin business at that time, which is another story. Because, who wouldn't do that?
I know.
But she had to have her son freaking co-sign the loan, the man she had raised. I mean,
Her child,
the
because he's male.
indignity. So
Yes.
anyway, I watched my mom really navigate
Mhm.
very much a man's world, and she just didn't have the choices that I have, that our peers have. And so I'm so grateful. You know, we stand on the shoulders of these women who came first. And in many ways, in order to create the spaces I now move in, these women had to operate like men.
Yes.
However, we don't need to do that anymore. And it's not only about like, oh, well, let me be soft, let me be gentle, let me be right. Like that's not actually the full menu. So
Mm,
I am here to bring women into their full menu of aliveness, um,
mm.
specifically in their careers and in their relationship with money.
It's amazing. And having the modeling that you did, understanding the gift that the generations before us, our mothers and grandmothers gave us, but that our tribute to them is not to continue struggling in some of those ways or hustling or burning ourselves out. It's to heal the, and bring this into a different state. And I love that you're not sacrificing ambition, right? You're teaching us not to, that we don't have to, there's an either or. Sometimes I can be a good mother or have a really
100%.
successful business in our minds. I can be ambitious or I can be feminine. And you're helping us, bringing through your work, bringing that together, which is what the feminine leadership model is so powerful for men and women, right? It's to bring in, all the
Yes,
sides of ourselves,
for
right?
all humans.
It enables and empowers men just as much as it enables and empowers women to do this work. And so I love it. So what Money a Love Story was
Mhm.
your most recent book, and also
Actually, no, Money, a
oh
Love Story was my first book. It came out in 20. I
oh
have like a weird career,
tell me
whatever.
why
Not
the
weird.
when they put the when that's so interesting.
I know.
Tell us the order that the books actually
What
have.
happened was I published Money, a Love Story in 2013. And
No.
then, so I wrote it when I was like, so it came out the year I was 30. I wrote it when I was like 28.
Yeah.
So I love that book. And it was written before I became a mother. It was written
Mm,
before I became a wife. It was written before I became an investor and a property owner and I was a business owner and I did very well, especially for
mhm,
someone my age.
mhm.
However, now
Okay.
in my early 40s, I know many things that I did not know then. Although I have to say, it's the coolest thing. Our work, I don't know how long ago you came out with your first book, but like, it's
2012, so
okay.
very
Okay.
similar to
Yeah. So
you.
you and I are totally like
Book
same time.
twins on that,
No,
yeah.
no, book twins. And isn't it the coolest thing how that body of work sort of has a life of its own, just like
Yes.
our children, right? Like I shaped it, I put it out into the world, I did absolutely the best job I could. And people tell me all the time how much it is changing their lives now, even though there's many other things I would say now, which I do in my programs, and I'm
Yes.
writing another book right now. So anyway, Money Love Story
So
came out in 2013. And my second book, Do Less, came out in 2019.
2019.
And
Okay.
then I had sort of pivot. I was like, okay, now we're talking about money. And then I had a big life change experience, traumatic birth, was the whole thing. And I really, when I became a mom, focused more on time and energy management. And
Yeah.
then several years ago, the money conversation kept calling me back. And I was like, okay,
Yes.
all right. So now we're back on money.
And you're back, and isn't that beautiful how we sort of circle, and these I had a writing professor once that said we have certain stories or themes, callings that are imprinted on. He would show us like our palms. It's like almost like if someone could read your palm, they would see with the DNA of our purpose, and those of us that are called to write, what we're writing. And so it's no surprise. And even Ann Patchett, who I think is an amazing writer,
Yes.
just incredible. I remember her once saying that she's like, I basically only have one story, and I just keep telling it. A group of
I love
strangers are thrown
it.
together, and
Yeah.
she's like, I have one. Like we have the thing that we always. What I've written fiction. I've written mainly write nonfiction right now, but it's all the same story. Like if someone reads my fiction, it's women, it's the women's empowerment journey. It's like it's always going to be about, so money's called you back, and so let's talk about what's different now from when you were an entrepreneur in your 30s, or in your late 20s really, and then now as you're revisiting money and teaching on money, because
Mm.
your program's happening right now, right? So
Yes, it is.
relaxed money. How can
So
we get relaxed, Kate?
yeah, how can we get relaxed money? Like I've literally never met anybody who hears that and isn't like, okay, yeah, interested.
Wow.
Like, tell me more. So I built a successful business.
Mhm.
We hit seven figures for the first time in 2017.
Yeah.
It's been very consistent and growing ever since. Very grateful for that.
Mhm.
I will say, as far as someone in this industry, my husband and I are very much the tortoises.
Mhm.
You're like, I have been doing this since 2009, and we're very like steady. We are not the rocket ships of the industry. We are not the people who like came out of nowhere and grew overnight. We have been around forever. So the beauty of that is I had a lot of perspective.
Yeah.
So 2017, we had our biggest year ever. And then 2018, my second daughter was born. My husband became incredibly ill at the same time. Like the minute I pushed her out, he broke out into this crazy full body rash that developed into a scenario in which his skin was essentially falling off
Oh
constantly.
my
So
God.
if you can imagine just basically not having skin, it's I won't get into more details because it's so horrific. And so we got into a loop for a good 4.5 years of him being ill or injured, because then he also broke his knee and then he also got hit by a car during that time.
Oh my
Um,
God. Right? Like
Yep,
biblical level
it
challenge.
was like, oh, okay, also this. And during this time, we run our company together.
Yeah.
It's our family's
Right.
income. And so during this time, I would go into this deep loop of profound resentment, which was
Mm,
awful because my husband was in excruciating pain and
right.
suffering, and like
Right.
nobody, I would never wish what he went through on anybody. And yet there was a real big part of me that was
Right.
like,
Mhm.
oh, okay, so you can just drop out of life. And
Right.
I'm just here with the babies
Yeah.
and
An
Christmas
infant
and
and running a
making
whole
the
business.
money and the blah, 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 right? So it was not, anyway, we all have these parts of ourselves. It was not my most evolved response,
Yeah.
but it was what happened. And we were just like in the loop.
Yeah.
So what ended up occurring
Mm,
after years of this
yeah.
was that we sat with our therapist and our therapist said to me, okay, Kate, because my thing was like everything would be better. My whole life would be better and I could finally exhale if
Mm,
Mike would just get healthy and make a bunch of money.
okay.
So that was like, where else in our lives do we do this, right? Like, once I lose 20 pounds, then I will be happy. Once my children graduate from high school, then I can live my life. Once I have $100,000 a year, $500,000 a year,
Yeah.
whatever. Once I get on the bestseller list, right?
Right.
Okay, so we all have these things. Mine just felt like so real. You
Yeah.
know what I
And
mean?
it's like, you don't understand. Everyone thinks this, but this
Yes.
is really hard. And it is,
No,
Kate, to be
it
fair, it
was.
was
No, it
really, really
was.
hard. Yeah.
It was really hard. And there were other things going on behind the scenes. But anyway, so we're sitting there, and my therapist, our couples therapist, was
Yeah.
like, "Now, Kate, I want you to close your eyes and
Yeah.
go inside and imagine that Mike has just come home and said, okay, I just made $10 million.
Right.
So you do not need to do anything
Right.
for a good long time."
Right.
And David said, "Now, how do you feel? Like, what's going on in your
Right.
body?" And what I expected I would feel was some degree of elation,
Yeah.
relief,
Relief.
joy. But actually, what my body felt, and what I know from the extensive research I have now done about our nervous system and our psyche, um, what I know is that our body always is telling the truth because our body has no sense of time and also does not know at all the difference between whether something is happening or whether we are imagining it happening, which is,
Right.
of course, the power of visualization, for better or for worse.
Right.
And so my body just flatlined and I felt instantly dead inside and depressed.
Mm.
It's like, okay, so what I began to realize is I was using financial pressure and stress and time pressure and stress as my stimulant
Hmm.
to fuel my life.
Yeah.
And I basically felt like I would be dead without it. And I didn't know who I would be because I was so addicted to
Hmm.
the hit that I got from, the initial adrenaline and then the constant drip, heavy drip of cortisol. So I was just running on cortisol. And at the same time, my functional medicine doctor, we had a chat about my blood work. And he
Mm.
was like, so the deal is your brakes are broken, and also so is your gas. And if
Mm.
you keep operating this way in your life, you are going to get very sick.
Mm.
But the thing is, when you have a 2.5-year-old and a 5-year-old, and I was living 3,000 miles from family, and my husband was sick, and I was like in charge of the business and the primary parent, I was like, oh, I don't have we can't have two sick parents.
That's right.
And so I just realized like my nervous system is set for stress and pressure. And that's my thermostat. And
Mm.
I don't even know who I'd be without it. And no amount of strategy or thinking my way out of this is going to fix it. I have to actually fundamentally change the way I'm wired. And so
Mm.
that's why I returned to the money conversation, because I gave myself a 90-day experiment where I was not allowed to operate in my business from stress and pressure. So previously, I was like, oh, well, I'll do this campaign and this cross
Mm.
sell and da da da. And like, I loved the rush of like, oh, there's an emergency. Let me pull this campaign out of my hat and I'll do a song and dance and we'll make a bunch of money. And like, I
Mhm.
loved the high. And I just said, okay, just for 90 days, we're
Okay.
just going to coast. You do not get to launch anything new. You do not get to do any new marketing campaigns, like nada. And anytime you have that ramp up energy of like, there's a financial emergency, my husband is sick, now he can't walk. We're living, I'm paying for two lives because we had just moved to Miami sort of under duress. And now I was still paying for our life in Maine and then
Right.
this new one and all the things. And then for 90 days, anytime I felt that like,
Mm.
well, I gotta go do something like hyperactivity. I had like a small menu of items I could do. And my
Mm.
choices were I could go take a walk.
Mhm.
I could go scream into a pillow in the closet.
Mhm.
I could watch daytime television,
Yeah.
or I could call a girlfriend,
Mm.
or I could go sit down by the bay
Mm.
and ask the bay
Yeah.
it's what messages it had for me. So that's what I did.
That was
And
the
for 90 days, it was painful.
Mhm.
It was so painful, but
Well, you were in withdrawal.
I was in withdrawal.
You were in
It was
withdrawal.
basically, yeah, I was withdrawing from a drug and I was like, this really sucks because doing less actually hurts a lot. And after that time though, what was so wild is we hit all of our financial goals, despite the fact that like I had been in full panic that we weren't going to make it. We
Right.
hit all our financial goals. And now I had all this evidence that stress and pressure were not
Mm.
required to hit financial goals or to keep my business going. Which is, I just also want to say, like, this happened in 2021. I wrote Do Less in 2017. So that was also embarrassing. It's,
There's nothing more humbling than being a thought leader, a writer, whatever. Like we do our own work, right? It's like the work is working us, and we're students of it as well. I call it living the work instead of walking the talk. Is sort of the way I think about it. It's we're living the work. Yeah.
yep. And so that was that. And then I began really like this fascination and a deep dive into trauma and the nervous system
Yeah.
and learning about how it impacts us and our ambition as women and how it impacts our relationship with money.
And what are so this is really big for people because someone might say, okay, I'll do that 90 days and I also want a whole book now on messages from the Bay. Now I'm curious about that's a whole nother place we can do a little woo here at the end, but the biggest message from the Bay. And because nature will talk to us. We
Oh
teach
yeah.
vision questing, and it's like, who does that in a book coaching program? It's like, what? But it's where do you think the ideas are coming? We don't want them coming from the rational,
No,
patriarchal, left
no.
brain mind for thought leadership. So a lot of people might think, oh, I get it. You took a break, almost like it's a sabbatical, but then again, back to the either or, like you were thinking, but I'm going to make no money. I'm going to sacrifice everything. And you had quite the opposite, right? You thrived. The business grew. The abundance was there. And there's some statistic now that's not going to shock anyone, but it's something like 98% of adults are walking around with a deregulated nervous system most
That
of the
makes
time,
sense.
right? Like I changed our whole curriculum at our last event 2 weeks ago, just do nervous system regulation like half the day, every day. I mean, we were just like, you know what? We are going to do strategy. We're going to learn stuff about writing books and speaking on stages and like
Yeah.
because everyone's jacked up. So
They're so jacked up, and you can't, if you layer strategy on top of a jacked up nervous system, all you will get is either A, the strategy won't work, or B, the
mhm,
strategy will work, but then you will sabotage it to make sure you go back to the previous setting of your nervous system, which is where
right.
it feels like home.
Yeah.
Your nervous system will always go back to
Yes.
its home setting until you change it.
It's like a thermostat and it's just set, right? So, Kate, what do you do so you're teaching relaxed money. You're the expert on this. What is one thing that if someone's listening to this, you need to come in the program, you need to do Kate's program, read the books. And what is something that is it the 90-day sabbatical from, or I'm calling it that, the abstention from the detox
Yeah.
from pressure and stress. Is there a particular practice you love to start getting people into this relaxed money mindset?
Yeah. Yeah. So, I don't, while people certainly can jump in and do the 90 days, I'm just like that. And honestly, that level of an extreme was required in my life
Mhm, mhm.
because things were going to break fast. My marriage, my body, everything.
Yeah.
Like we were not, so I don't think that level is required for most people. And in fact, you may very well know this concept of titration, which is small doable
Yes.
parts over time. The nervous system actually responds really well to little bits, just enough. Like in my training, we call it the minimum effective dose. I was really doing like the aggro version, which actually is a match for my own nervous system set point. So that was evidence of also where I was at. But anyway, regardless, um,
Well,
now
right. The
like
stakes were
I,
high. And
yeah,
if
the
and
stakes were high.
if you're at that point when it's your health, your marriage, or whatever it is, then it's a different situation than,
Totally.
okay, I'm probably running on that old model of I don't know what the opposite of relaxed money, just accelerate,
Yeah.
hyper fixated
Stress, money.
hustle money,
Yeah.
and so because like you said, there's the money set point, like what's the financial abundance we've allowed to come into us, but also like where is my nervous system set that it thinks is required? It'll create a crisis
It
if
will
we're used to being on
absolutely
crisis,
100%.
we'll create a crisis.
For sure, because the nervous system does not want us to experience anything we haven't experienced before. So,
Survival.
financial peace and abundance for most people is not what they have experienced before. So, it's at direct odds.
Yeah.
Like, our desires around money and our ambitions are largely at direct odds with our nervous system thermostats. And so, we have to change the thermostat. So, what I recommend people do is, I mean, my students often, not always, but often have some degree of financial avoidance or dysfunction,
Mm,
meaning they make really great money, but they have no idea where it goes.
right.
Or they make really good money, but they go into total freeze and guilt around spending any of it. So they just like have so much in the bank and also are carrying a credit card balance, which makes no sense. Like, so when you
Mhm.
kind of get behind the scenes, it looks really good in the front and like really perfect, and
Mm,
my people really look like they have it together.
right.
And then, but they're like, don't go and look in the storeroom. Don't go back there. And there's zero judgment about that because like I was that person a
Right.
hundred
Sure.
percent. So where we start is the simple act of financial clarity, which most adults have been avoiding
Mhm.
for decades.
Yeah.
Just even like, okay, cool. So what do you spend every month?
Right.
What do you earn?
Right.
Just like where are the accounts? Where
Yes.
are the logins? Just like really building that foundation, which I call the now point. But
Mm,
what makes the work different than any other personal finance work I've ever been exposed to is that first we build the somatic safety and the somatic capacity to approach our numbers so that we don't twirl out into judgment, shame,
yeah.
freeze, like, and when we do, because of course like that will happen, we actually know how to come back to a baseline of capacity
Yeah.
and honestly neutrality.
Yes.
Because without that level of clarity, like neutral clarity,
Yeah.
we can't actually go towards our North Star, what I call our North Star, which
Right.
is our financial goals. And then when we do, as we've already discussed several times, if you get to the North Star and you haven't done the deeper rewiring of your brain and nervous system, same system,
Right.
um, your brain is part of the nervous system,
Yes.
but like it won't work, it won't stick. And we know so many stories, of celebrities, of people we know who make a ton of money
Mm,
and then overgive, overspend,
yeah.
sabotage in some, I just heard that Justin Bieber had to sell his entire song catalog for $200 million because he ran out of money.
Right?
It's like,
You think
what?
about that. And we're talking about
How did that
crazy
happen?
numbers. You think unlimited
He
wealth
was
for the
worth
rest of
like
your
a
life.
billion dollars. I'm like, what?
Mm,
He needed, I don't
yes.
know Justin personally, but I would imagine he could have used some nervous system healing in his
Yeah.
relationship to money to feel safe with
Yeah.
that level of abundance and visibility.
Mm. And I love that because I have certainly not been exposed to any financial program, whether it's even on the coaching side or wealth advising, that is bringing this in, right? And this is the work, everybody. Whatever if it's money, if you're looking at creativity, you're looking at parenting, it's the nervous system work right now. It is, and so Kate, I love that you have blended these worlds so that people, because I remember I was that person in college who was just an absolute idiot with money, truly like wouldn't want to look at the bank. When you'd go get the ATM deposit and it would say, "Do you want to check your balance?" I remember saying no. Like I would actually remember this, and I would
Totally.
not want to open bills, like be afraid of the mail. And
Yeah.
I remember I worked in corporate briefly before becoming an entrepreneur and a writer, and I said, I knew it was the same thing with you getting ready to have a family. It was like I cannot start something if I don't fix this. Like this is not okay. Like I cannot try to start a business with the money consciousness and habits that I have now. This is going to be a disaster. And thank God I would have loved to find you. It would have fast tracked me a lot more to find you what you're doing now. But even just understanding just clarity of numbers. And I don't know if you find this, Kate, I'm curious because I just sort of did this as an experiment. I experiment everything on myself first, before ever, bringing it out. But every time I do clarity work around numbers, so, just obviously now we have a team and we call them P&Is, not P&Ls, because why say losses, profits and
Love that.
investments. That's
I
all. That's
love
the
that.
only
That's
two things we
great.
do in our business,
Yeah,
profit or invest.
totally.
And, and, and okay, so I have, more systematized things now because we have a
Yeah.
bigger business, but every time more abundance would come in. Every single
Every
time I
time.
got clear, and so I used to have this joke with, I said, just try it. Log your money for a month, write down everything you spend. If it's $1, if it's a $5 coffee, every single thing, more money will come in. Every time it worked with people. It's amazing.
It's wild. I do this free workshop every year called Good with Money.
Oh,
And it is a 3-day container. This year we had 45,000 people in there
oh
and
my,
we went through and the money miracles that people create simply by committing and doing the homework, which is like not even that complicated,
right,
right?
right.
And folks are like, wait, hold up. What's happening all of a sudden is like tons of people. Here's what I hear. I had a client who had ghosted me. I had written off their invoices. And all of a sudden, like years later, they call back or they finally send the invoice and they're like, I'm so sorry I ghosted you. I want to make it right. That happens so often.
Right.
It's shocking. And then like just other unexpected tax refunds, unexpected, like, oh, you overpaid your insurance. Oh, this like it money is, I mean, I am so practical. I am so practical. And also, money is energy. It
It
is pretend.
is.
Human beings made up money. It is
Made
not
it up.
real like this pen. Like you can hold the pen. No, like yes, no, but money is pretend. It is a pretend system. We're
Yeah.
all playing, but it is a game.
Yes.
Yeah, that's it.
Isn't that incredible? And I think again, thank you for the work you do because you can do the practical, but when you also bring in the energetics, because money is energy. And the idea of, and that's why I love Money, a Love Story, even as the title of that first book. Now I know. Um, because so much of us don't have a love relationship with money. We have an adversarial, we have a fear relationship, a lack relationship. And I was at a workshop once years ago, and it was like a money meditation, and we had to talk to money. And I remember like being nervous. It was like, oh, we're going to sit down and visualize, money coming. And money was like, I love you. I also lighten that F up. Like, and Money was doing this. It was like telling me to go, like, why don't you give me some shimmy? Like
Yeah.
lighten up, girl.
Tighten up.
I'm here for
Totally.
you. I'm here for everyone. This is not hard. I'm in an infinite abundance, right? And so thank you for bringing the layers, the nervous system, making it safe to even look. Because that's what, when I was doing that it was like once a week, I would sit down and do my numbers. And I was so scared. I would be sweating. My heart would be racing. That's how much fear I had to just look at
100%.
numbers.
Well, and what's really important to understand on a physiological level is that we are animals, right? And when our stress and threat load is high, which it is in times of financial
Yeah.
constriction and just like life in general, right? Like we
Yeah.
are just with so much information, so much, toxic overload. I mean, so many things. When we are in that state, our body is experiencing a real threat. Like it's like,
Yes.
oh, if I look at these numbers, I'm going to die. Or what I'm making these numbers mean is an
Right.
actual threat to my survival. That's not largely accurate, right? But our bodies don't know that. And so that's why affirmations and thought and mindset work alone does not work because we cannot talk a scared animal, which
Mm.
our body is, into knowing that everything's fine.
Right.
It's the same thing when a kid comes to you crying, telling that child you're okay when they're clearly not okay.
Yeah.
Believe it or not, our bodies will respond to a comment, our own or someone else's,
Yes.
as an additional threat when it's not a match with what we're experiencing
Yeah.
physiologically, which is why we practice nervous system healing tools so that we can come to those numbers
Yes.
and not and like know how to create an experience of safety and clarity and also access to our full
Mm.
mental cognition, right? When
Right.
we're dysregulated,
Oh,
we don't get blood flow to our brain. It's
right.
going to our extremities so we can run or fight. That doesn't help us do math. That
No.
doesn't help us come up with great strategies to sell more of our stuff with, higher margins. Like that's not helping. Yet most of us have been conditioned to think that some level of pressure and stress in our bodies is required to get a good result. And that's also connected to the conditioning that some amount of suffering is required in order for you to have anything that's worth having, that like suffering buys us something.
The addiction to I have to work hard, struggle, or suffer in
Yeah.
order to receive money, success is so prevalent. It's epidemic.
Yes.
And so okay, I just this is so important, right? And I know those of you listening are you're gonna hear this if this is you. Is there a part of you, a large part, even a small part still, that thinks I have to struggle in order to receive? I know there's that's still work I get to keep doing. There's layers, layers, layers. Is there still a part of me that thinks and believes and identifies with that? Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's what we get to keep working on
Totally.
wherever anyone listening is on that. You might have released, I feel like I've released a lot of it. And I still think I can look at my own life. Like you were saying, Kate, if we look at our business and see that there's a constant, steady, pressure, then there's some attachment or addiction to the idea that there has to be this,
Really?
so it's so huge. And so Kate's giving us the beginning of this, which is before we do the numbers and the strategy, what is the way we're going to create safety in the body, the mind, the spirit to be able to approach that with neutrality and creativity, right? And to get excited, curious, ooh, what could I do differently? What,
Yes.
right? Like that energy is so causative of abundance in my experience and desire. Sometimes we're afraid to even want. We have all
Oh,
kinds of stuff around even
absolutely.
wanting anything. And in my new book, we're writing a lot about desire as a causative energy and not just sexual desire, right? It's like
Yeah,
the
all
desire
desire.
for financial abundance, the desire for impact, the desire to create a legacy. And there is so much stuff around being allowed to want and it being safe to
Mhm.
desire anything. So
Yes.
wow, Kate, so big. And so when people go on the journey, when they come to your 3 day, is that something people can do later this year? Do you do that annually or is it like it's a
I do it annually, so it's every April.
right? So
So once a
everybody
year.
get on Kate's list. We'll have all the links below and mark your, because that's so huge to get started in the process and then people can come do the deeper work in the program. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. But
Yes.
along the way, I have a weekly podcast that people can, and I'm
Yes.
very like, I make sure to give people a lot to work with.
Yes.
Um, because as much as I run a business and I am very much about being profitable,
Yeah.
I also like really want to help people. I mean, this stuff, so I'm always like, listen, get my book from the library. I don't care. Like, just do it because the best, this, there is nothing better than hearing from people who you were able to have an impact on. Nothing, no amount, no check will ever beat the feeling of having a positive impact on somebody's life.
Yeah.
Like it's the greatest thing in the world.
Have a lot of people found you through the books? We obviously we coach on and
Oh
thought leaders
yeah.
had me on books. So like
Yes. Oh my
just
God. I'm
yeah,
so glad I wrote my books.
right. I mean, I was going to ask
Yeah.
because I love asking people this too. Obviously, you do things. You teach. You have a. I mean, you all. Kate has a huge. You probably know this, but Kate has a huge, huge, huge top in the world podcast, right? And so you didn't have to write books. Like you had other ways of reaching people. The podcast. You speak. You have a business. You do the events online. Different things. What role have the books played?
I mean, first of all, I'm just a writer. Like, I love writing. People talk about like how much suffering is required to write a book. And I'm like, is it okay to say I like just really enjoyed it? I mean, there are
Yes,
moments, of course,
of
that are
course.
hard,
Yeah.
and sometimes the editing process really gets me, but the actual
Yes.
like being there with my ideas and like
Yes.
tuning into the energetic, I mean, I always, when I sit down to write, I always light a candle and I just say, like, please guide me to say what people need to hear.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
then I just trust that whatever comes through is what comes through. So I love it. And oh my gosh, my books, I'm telling you, like the number of people who I mean, that first book, 2013, people still find me from that
Right.
all the freaking time. And
Right.
there's an intimacy
Yeah.
in a book and there's a timelessness. Like, how social media is. And honestly, even I love my podcast and it's more of a
Sure.
long, long form, whatever, it's a deeper
Right.
dive. But let's be real, in a year from now, is
Right.
anyone listening to the podcast episode I just recorded? Like, and here I am
Yeah.
on a podcast saying this,
Right.
sorry, but
But I write,
that's
I mean,
true.
I'm on book
It's
7.
just
I just started
true.
book 7. It's the
But books are
books.
timeless.
They
They are
live
timeless.
beyond us. They
Yeah.
live for centuries, decades,
Oh, yeah.
and they have a gravitas. They have a tangibility. Even if you're reading the digital or listening to the
Yeah.
audiobook, there is a longevity in the
Yes.
book and the impact, right? So I love that you enjoy because yes, yes, is sometimes it hard and finding the time and all that, but I love to write. And so you love it and you've written these books and you do have a new one that you're working on.
I
So we
do
can
have a
keep
new
that
one
in
that
the
I'm
secret
working
zone.
on.
We can have
Yeah,
you
no, no.
back to
I
talk
mean,
about it. Okay.
I can't really, I mean, the book's not written, so I can't really,
Yeah.
but it's in process. I've written like,
Yes.
3 chapters.
Yes.
I know what it's shaping up to be. And so, you know, We'll
Yeah.
see.
We'll see. And do you do anything like that people should know about the way that you, because right now you're like, I wrote these books, I'm writing a new one. Do you do book funnels? Do you promote the books? Do you just let them find people organically? Like anything
This is
that
a good
you
question. Okay,
just
well,
curious?
I'm really playing around with this a lot personally. So both of my books have been traditionally published with
Yes.
Hay House,
Right.
and that's been great. I love
Mhm.
them. And I'm also asking myself questions right now about like, what is the best path forward? Because I'm a writer first and foremost, but I
Mhm.
am also a marketer. And I'm like, okay, ultimately, like I know a book is top of funnel for me. Right. So it is a paid product, but like you and I both know, like we're not making massive amounts of money for it. Like I'm not Danielle Steele.
Everyone who's trained with me knows what we talk about here.
Yeah,
It's
that's
the
like,
business behind the
it is
book, the
not
high
a
ticket
revenue
item behind the book.
model
It's the
in and of
door
itself.
opener.
It's part of a revenue system. And so when the books have come out, we've been very intentional about like our pre-launch campaign and the
Yes,
pre-orders and the whatever
of
and the
course.
bonuses and whatever. Um, that being said, I'm really thinking through this next one and
Mhm.
possibly making some different choices
Mhm.
so that I can have more agency and more ability to have the buyer data so that I
Yes,
can be more intentional about running traffic and
right.
retargeting with ads and building in all the funnels to drive people where I want. I mean, have we done it? Yeah. Could it be way more dialed in? For sure.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, what's exciting is this is the opportunity. Like every new book, we get to decide, and we're talking this whole series that's coming off and kicking off now in our world and on this podcast is bringing entrepreneurship to publishing because it
Oh, I
has been.
love
I
that.
did
So
traditional
great.
first, and I also still do. I've done. This is book number 7 that I'm doing sort of a traditional partnership with. So it's really
Cool.
interesting. I'm obsessed around. This is my obsession right now. Like yours being called back to money. This is my obsession right now. And really looking at what are the things for author forward paradigms because there's been
Yes.
publisher forward if you
Totally.
go traditional, and that's okay. It's just that's just what it is. And so this is really exciting. I'm excited for you, and we'll have to have you back when it's time for that
Yeah.
book, so we can hear what you did decide and look and get excited about whatever you decided to create there. But there's also a time because of the age that we're in and the different multimodal ways that books are being consumed and content is being consumed. There's just a lot of opportunity for creativity and innovation in this industry. So perfect
Yeah.
timing for you to be doing a new one. And
Love
just
that.
before we finish, I was listening to James Wegmar was on one of your podcasts, who I adore, and just love both of your work together in that conversation. Could we end with just a quick story about signs and synchronicity? Because you talked about a license plate experience, a
Yeah.
vanity plate with your husband that sort of affirmed that book, and love to we're a little woo here,
Oh, yeah.
and so love anything about, so as people, because I think the books do come to us. I do think that they come and ask to be written, whether Elizabeth Gilbert's big magic idea, whatever, everyone's heard different versions of that. In Greek mythology it was the muse would arrive, but I do believe it's a call and response. Like there are people who need, like you said, the message, and the universe, will you write me? And so could we hear the license plate if you happen to
Yeah,
remember that
it's
one? Okay.
such a great, I love this story. So I was 1 year postpartum with our first daughter. Hay House had been asking me for a second book for a
Yeah.
while because the first one
Mhm.
did well. And I kept just being like, I don't have anything further to say. Stand by.
Right. Yeah.
So then I went on my first trip alone after having a baby. I went to San Francisco and I remember I called Mike, I think maybe from a cab or something.
Yes.
And I said, "Oh, I got my next book idea. Like it downloaded. I'm ready." And
Yeah.
I said, it's called Do Less." And he was like, "That's amazing. And I'll tell you why when you come home." And I was like, "Okay." So I come home and I walk in the front door and he had just ordered a new vanity. My husband's obsessed with vanity plates
Yeah.
for cars. I don't know why. I never had one before him, but now like we only do vanity plates.
Yeah.
And so
Yes.
he had ordered his new plate and it had arrived literally like the day I had told him this, and he brings it out and his vanity plate that he had ordered weeks ago was do less.
I mean,
And
everybody,
it
come
was
on.
like, wait, I'm sorry, what? Like, out of all the concepts that both of us could individually pluck from the universe, and this was not something that it was like we were bopping around this
No,
idea. We were not. It was
no.
so amazing.
Did you have that moment of just the universe has fully confirmed, like
Fully
game on?
confirmed. And then it's just like, you know what? When it can be this clear and this good, anytime I'm like wishy-washy about something,
Yeah.
it's just like, oh, if
Mm,
it's not this obvious, like it's probably not that it has to be that obvious. I mean, that's like a hit you over the head one. But like any other time I'm trying to push something that's not working or I'm not sure or whatever, it's like a good reminder of no, 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 the universe will make it super clear. So if
yeah,
it's not this, it's a no.
it's a no. There's the discernment, right? And how we can stay relaxed. Kate, this has been absolutely incredible. That's an amazing story, and I love it. I love signs. I love any, it's just it's absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much for being with us today. We're so excited to follow the journey. Everybody go over to Plenty with Kate Northrup. Enjoy the podcast. We'll have the notes and links. Where else should people come find you, Kate?
Instagram is a great place at
Perfect.
Kate Northrup.
Beautiful. So find Kate on Instagram, listen to the podcast, and then hopefully we can have you back, Kate, when the new book is ready so we can hear about that journey. Thanks so much for being here.